Hello and welcome to a Firstpost POV. 2026 is off to a crazy start. First, we had a US military operation in Venezuela to capture their sitting president. And now Donald Trump is saying that he needs Greenland, which is part of Denmark, a NATO country, for national security reasons. The White House is saying that all options are on the table to bring Greenland into their fold, and that includes military operations. Basically, the United States is talking about attacking NATO soil and bringing NATO land under their control. The question is, will they follow through on this threat? And if they do, what does it mean for the Western security infrastructure? Joining me now to discuss Donald Trump and his threats against Greenland is Mr. Jens Wendel-Hansen, who's a senior researcher at the Aarhus University of Denmark. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us on Firstpost.
Thank you.
I can't believe this is my first question, but I have to ask you, how likely is it that a US president is going to launch a military operation on a NATO region?
Honestly, I feel very hard of answering your question because this is a remarkable, mind-blowing incident, and what will happen, I can really not guess. I would say that it is hard to see that our NATO allies will engage in direct war with the United States. So it is hard also to see what should hinder him in doing so. But otherwise, you would say that the frustrating part in this is also that that the control that you are talking of, the control he is demanding, he is actually already having, because there are military stations in Greenland. So it is really a very what do you call it? Absurd discussion, and very hard to grasp from an analytical point of view.
Now, Denmark's leader said something very interesting, which is that if Donald Trump were to go ahead and launch this attack, it would be the end of NATO as we know it and the end of the security pledges that have shaped the global order, especially the Western order, since the end of the Second World War. Would you agree that if there was an attack by the United States on Greenland, it would effectively mean NATO's no more valid and it's not relevant anymore?
It is anyway hard to see how you will get back from that, because this is very serious. It is it is a case where allies are going towards each other, and also the really interesting thing is that this was not an issue when NATO was established. So this is a conflict which has evolved during the alliance lifetime. So this is of course a great and deciding moment for NATO. If it would be possible to get back from this, it is to be shown.
What's the sentiment, the public sentiment in Denmark like when people like you living in Denmark hear what the US president is saying across the pond, that even a military operation is on the table? Is it shock? Is it surprise? Is there an element of fear as well that the US military is the most powerful fighting force in the world and they're talking about attacking your sovereign soil?
People are nervous and scared. And especially the Greenlanders, of course. I have plenty of friends in Nuuk, and I have gotten into contact with them, and they are very frightened of what is going to happen. So this is very worrying. In a Danish sense, it is also hard for a small country to face the fact that what we assumed was our greatest and most close ally now Fred has shown that he doesn't have a great respect for state sovereignty in the case of Venezuela, and therefore it is actually plausible that this will take place. This military operation. So it is very worrying, especially for a small country like Denmark, to live in such a changing world where even our greatest and closest allies cannot be trusted anymore.
In terms of security, what sort of assets and what sort of presence does Denmark have in Greenland? We know that President Trump completely dismissed and mocked Denmark's protection, saying they're now deploying more dog sleds in Greenland to protect the security of the island. But in real terms, what does Denmark have on the island to protect itself, not just from the United States, but from any foreign threats?
Denmark has different kind of vehicles in order to state sovereignty over Greenland. A large portion of the Danish fleet is located in Greenlandic in the Greenlandic seas. So therefore there are of course military presence, but Denmark is not a military superpower, and the point of being military present in Greenland has hitherto been to state sovereignty. But the defense of Greenland has since 1941 been also a matter for the US, and that makes this this case even more absurd, because the Americans are present at militarily in Greenland, and that will of course make a military defense which is already very impossible. That will make it even more problematic, since the Americans are present in Greenland.
There are people who say that Trump is not serious about the invasion. What he's trying to do is intimidate Denmark, basically raise the rhetoric to such a level that Denmark decides it's not worth standing up to the United States. We might as well give in to what Donald Trump is asking. Is there a feeling in Denmark that if tensions rise to an unprecedented level, we should just give in and hand over Greenland? Or is the government very clear that the sovereignty of Denmark over Greenland is not up for negotiation?
I have not heard any kind of uttering from the Danish administration that can in any way be connected to some kind of what do you call it, agreement in the transferring of Greenland. The Greenlanders has a lawful right to independence if they so choose, and that is the Danish administration's line in this. That this is a matter of for the Greenlanders to decide where they are connected to. There has not been any kind of way of ambiguance or something like that in this in these utterings. The Danish government has asked, together with their Greenlandic colleagues, they have asked for a meeting with the American foreign minister. So now it is to be seen whether this is actually something that can be solved in kind of a diplomatic in a diplomatic way, but at present, it is clear that the threats are increasing, and given the Venezuelan case, it is hard to see that Trump wouldn't be serious, or he could be serious about also invading Greenland. That is plausible, but from a Danish point of view, there are hardly any more tools in the toolbox than diplomacy, and that is what is tried, and that is also what has been successful as so far. That most of our great allies in NATO has supported the Danish government. But I would say that the prime tool in the toolbox for the Danish government would be diplomacy.
You mentioned that a lot of your NATO allies in Europe have come to the support of Denmark. And we saw that statement there a couple of days ago by 6 European countries who reaffirmed the sovereignty of Denmark and also called for Arctic security. But I was just wondering, there's a difference between reaffirming the sovereignty of Denmark and calling out the United States for what is essentially blatant aggression. The fact that the European countries have not named and directly attacked the United States for what their president is doing, do you think that's been a drawback of the European statements in solidarity?
It's hard to say that it could be way back if an invasion is made. That you're perfectly right. But 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 also the NATO alliance is an alliance in order to a defense alliance in order to secure from military invasion, and therefore you have to at least question whether this will have some kind of effect if Danish sovereignty over Greenland is compromised. That is to be seen. But of course, you can say that could be a rhetorical way back for the great powers in NATO to say that they have only stated sovereignty. But I would say that as NATO should function, it is hard not to understand it as also as solidarity against an invasion.
If these tensions rise, do you foresee a situation where perhaps the European Union has no option but to impose perhaps economic sanctions or take retaliatory measures against the United States? Because at the end of the day, would be an attack not just on Danish soil, but also on European soil by the United States. Do you foresee things going to that extent if an attack is made?
The European Union could make the case that Greenland is actually not part of the European Union. So I don't know if that would. There is probably a reason that this has been, to a large extent, a NATO case or NATO incident, or and that is probably because it is undeniable that Greenland is a part of NATO. So this will definitely be interesting how to make these cases. But as it seems now, it doesn't seem that Trump has a great respect for economic sanctions and so on. That of course depends on their intensity and so on. But I would say that if I should say that there were something to be done apart from these diplomatic negotiations, I would maybe say that some kind of troop stationing in Greenland from the NATO allies would probably send some kind of signal also to Washington in order to the seriousness of this uttering from the European great powers and also from Canada, as I have understood it. So that would, troops present in the US from our allies would probably send some kind of signal. But whether that is if that is on the paper, I really don't know.
Finally, let me just ask you, is there any diplomatic concession that Denmark can make that could reduce the tensions? We know that the US already has significant military latitude over Greenland. They have a base there. They can station soldiers there. We've seen the vice president visit. We've seen the president's son visit. Beyond what the Americans have access to right now, what more can Denmark give to appease the US president? Is there anything of that sort on the table that the government is talking about?
That is actually the great problem in this. It is actually hard to see how Denmark could make more concessions towards the US than they have already done. It is possible for the US to play a part in the raw material exploitation in Greenland through negotiations through companies and the Greenlandic government and so on. that is possible and plausible, and it's actually a fact at present that Americans are exploiting Greenlandic raw materials, and as you said, the military presence is a fact since 1941 in Greenland. So there is no. It is hard to see what concessions should be made in this regard, because those arguments that the Trump administration has posed against the Danish government is actually not very valid, because they are military present and they have possibility to negotiate with the Greenlandic government in order to exploit raw materials. So it is really hard to say what concessions should further be made.
Right. Well, looking at all of this from our part of the world, it does seem a bit surreal and almost implausible to see. It started off in the first term
from my point in the world,
exactly.
too, I would say.
Exactly. It started off in the first term of the US president as some sort of a joke. In the second term, it's become a very real security threat for Denmark and for the Western world. We'll see how Donald Trump goes forward. He said a military option and invasion is on the table. Let's see if he goes through with that. And more importantly, we'll also look at how the diplomatic side of things and the talks unfold between the two sides. Let's hope there's no violence over what is a beautiful piece of land covered by snow called Greenland, the largest island in the world. Nonetheless, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us on Firstpost.
Thank you.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, Firstpost America gets a new look. I'm Kerry Johnston, and this is Firstpost America.